Okay, we can have a little look at final construction now. Now, this part will depend, well, it doesn't really, it's much the same depending on whether you want to use the 2 zipper pocket version, or if you wanted to use the frame version, interior. So I'm going to use the 2 pockets in this one. It makes no difference at all. The construction is exactly the same. So basically, take your interior panel, whether that's got this on or the frame, and fold it in half. Now I like to just press that bottom fold just to make sure that both are exactly the same height. And on the inside of my fold, I'm just going to do a line, mark a line. Now that's, where's my ruler? That usually, or should be, 3.5 inches from one end or the other, because this should be 7 inches from one end to the other. So I'm just going to mark a line. I'm actually using the fold line that I've pressed in centrally across between. So I've got the zippers on either end, and I've just drawn a line across the centre there. I'm using a chalk marker so that it'll rub off easily. And then I'm going to take my lining panel. Now don't assume that the central mark will actually necessarily be between your pocket slots on either side, because it depends which pocket slots you've done. So this is just less than 8 inches from one side to the other. It's 7 7/8. So what you're looking for is just less than 4 inches. So it's 3 and 15/16. So just less than 4 inches basically. I'm not, my ruler doesn't do 1/16 of an inch, and neither do I. So I'm just going to mark that with my chalk marker. Now if you're worried it's not in the centre, just fold it in half and you'll see whether it's in the centre. And actually that is exactly in the centre. Now you have to think about how you're going to orientate your purse once you've created it, and this is very much a personal thing. So here's my exterior, and I'm just going to pop my card slots within my exterior. So when I hold my purse, I will have my ID slot on this side and my money slot on this side and no money slot on that side. Is that the way I want it? Yes, it's fine. You could have it the other way around, whichever feels most comfortable to you. Now, what I would recommend you doing, once you've got that piece in place and it feels comfortable and it's sort of sitting inside of there, is you take your interior piece, whichever piece it is you're going to be using, and you kind of pop that centrally within the lining there, so that you can kind of get a feel for making sure that the zippers are orientated the right way. Now, I'm right-handed, so I want my zippers to open left to right, because that's the way it feels comfortable. If you're left-handed, take your panels and turn them round. But by putting it all together, I know it's not stone, you can get a feel for exactly how you want it to be. So having got a feel for it, and I'm just going to turn my inner panel round again because I am right-handed, I'm now going to remove my lining and my pocket panel. So I know that my pockets are orientated the way I want them to be. I'm going to open it up, and I want to position my zippered pockets so that the central line that I drew on here, and the same applies if you've got a frame pocket, the central line I drew on here sits on the line that I've drawn on my card slots. And I want to make sure that it's positioned centrally. Now, if you want to use a ruler, then please do, to make sure that it's positioned centrally, and that's actually perfect. So I'm getting quite good at this eyeballing. I do it quite a lot, it has to be said. Once you're happy, take it to the machine. Excuse me, long threads, top and bottom. If I can get hold of the thread, that is. what's going on here. I've got that's better. Okay, so if you want to use some big long clover clips or whatever to hold that in place, then you can do. I don't. I just take it to the machine and stitch. Now you should be able to see that it sits evenly at the top and the bottom as well, so the zippers are sitting nice and straight. That will give you another clue that you've got the whole thing in straight. And we're just going to do a line of stitching along that central line that you've marked, but only on the pockets. We're not actually going to go off of the pockets because we don't want to weaken the faux leather. So only across the pockets. And at the end, pull your work out, cut long threads. Take your threads from the front. You've done this 100 times now, so you know what you're doing. Take them through to the back and tie them off. It really is worth doing all of this because there isn't anywhere you can kind of hide stitching on this. It's all quite exposed. So finishing off your, finishing off your lines of stitching by burying and hiding your thread ends, it's just so much nicer. It gives such a professional finish. Oh, don't know what that was. Oh, battery's running low. So now I have my lining inside of my pockets within my lining panel. I'm now going to take my exterior and I'm going to lay my lining back into my exterior. Make sure that you've got it orientated the right way. Hold your pockets up and kind of fold it back up again the same way as you did before to make sure that it's laid, it's in there the way you want it. And you're going to put you're going to find that your lining panel sits fractionally within the exterior edge of the edge, should I say, of the exterior. I'm getting my words muddled now. So clip it in place. Use lots and lots of clips, and just make sure that it's sitting absolutely centrally. You may have a little bit more, you may have a little bit less around the outside. It depends what you've used for your exterior fabric. If you use tweed, which is quite thick, you get a bit extra because of the turn of cloth going around your stiff interfacing. So you might have a little bit extra showing. Now that's actually too far that way, so I'm just gonna move it over. And sometimes you do have to just kind of jiggle it about until it's actually in the right place. Once you've got it in the right place, just clip it. That's better. I think I was being a little bit on the generous side, leaving as much as I was on this side. So use plenty of clips. Don't be afraid to use lots of clips, because the better that this is sort of attached, the less likely you are to have an issue when you're sewing it on. And we're just coming to what most people probably would consider to be the scary bit. Don't be afraid. This is not scary. This is just, this is a point where you need to be really accurate. Take your time, be slow and considered, because this is where, this is the last bit. This is the bit where you fail if you don't get it right. First things first, let's just ensure that I have enough thread on my bobbin, because there's nothing quite like getting halfway around your final top stitching and finding that you've done half of it with no thread in your bobbin. How many of you have done that? Hands up. I think we've all done it. If you haven't, then you're not a sewer. I just don't believe people that tell me that they haven't. So my lining is all now attached into my exterior. I'm happy with the positioning of it, she says as she fiddles with it. I'm just going to pop another couple of clips in. There's no such thing as too many clips, so you know, if you want more clips, use more clips. Now I start my final stitching in this bit here, in this middle part where it's actually thinner because there's only one layer of faux leather. It gets a little bit thicker as you come round, depending on how many card slots and bits and pieces you've got, but there are I've tried to keep it so that the maximum you've got is 2 layers of faux leather plus your exterior fabric. So take it slowly, pop a bigger needle in if you're worried about this. Now I've got I believe this is a size 16 needle in here, and I think this will be sufficient for my needs. I'm going to top stitch around the outside of my lining panel at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm going to do one back stitch at the beginning and one back stitch at the end. So there's my back stitch. I'm going to use first of all, I'm going to move my pockets out of the way so that they're not in my way. And I'm going to use my awl to make sure that my lining panels stay where I want them to. So I'm using that like an extra digit on my hand just to make sure that everything stays where I want it to be. Take it slowly. If you feel you need to hand crank this, then please do hand crank it. There's no shame in doing that. When you get to the curve, if you want to hand crank it, just do that. It's not worth getting anxious for the sake of putting your foot on the pedal, to be honest. The straight lines are easier than the curves, I will happily admit that. As I'm coming down this side, I'm using my awl to make sure that my pockets, my card slots don't get pushed down by the foot, so they stay nice and level. I've actually got a clip in each of the card slots, so basically I'm just making sure that they don't move by holding them in place with the end of my awl. Sometimes the very end of my presser foot will catch on them and push them out of place. It's really annoying and it just looks really untidy. So using the awl just gives me that security that they are staying where I want them to be. I've got a thread poking out there, so I'm just going to pop it, use my awl to pop it back inside. Obviously one that I didn't glue down. I'm just popping it back between the 2 layers. move my pockets out of the way because they do get in the way. Now when you come up to this top edge, what you've got to remember is not to stitch through your flap. So you can fold your flap out of the way, and you will have to kind of hold your purse upwards, so that, because the flap's quite bulky at the back there, to stop it from sort of deforming where you're stitching. So if you hold your purse upwards, so pop your fingers underneath it, raise it from the bed of the sewing machine, you should be able to stitch along this top edge where that flap is without too many issues. Again, I'm using my awl. Let me just clip these out of place so you can perhaps see a little bit better. So again, I'm using my awl to hold my lining in place. Sorry, I've gone a bit quiet. Top stitching is something I went a bit quick. Top stitching is something I love doing, but you do need to concentrate if you want it to look good. And as I say, with this, there's very little wiggle room. If you don't get it right, there's very little, there's just nowhere to hide. So let's get rid of my thread ends. And I can remove that clip. Now, I don't know if you can see, but my stitching is perfectly level all the way, the top stitching perfectly level all the way around the outside, and that's because my card slots and what have you were perfectly centrally located inside. So now I have completed my purse, and I am going to keep this one because I think she's beautiful. She's just, this is my favourite fabric. And what I like to do is just give her a good finger pressing and then pop her under a book for the night. That flattens her down, takes away any of the bulk that you might have got. I also like to kind of press this bottom bit up so that it's not quite as pointy at the bottom, so it's got a slightly wider base. That means then that the top bits don't poke out quite so far, so she's actually more that shape. Personal preference, but there we go. That is Persephone finished. I think she's wicked. Love her, don't you? So there we go. Or you can do exactly the same thing with the frame version. The same construction works just as well with the frame version as it does with this. I'm really happy with that.